Ha! Welcome everybody to another episode of Labs Talk Live. Hi Erika.
Hi Sven. Hi everyone.
You always have the nicest background, I must say, like always. How are you doing? Yeah?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's a pretty sunny day. That's why I thought I'm actually gonna look into my all my clothes actually and turn on some nice shirt actually for a change. To make up for the background, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's always good. So yeah, today we have two very special guests, and we're going to be talking about telepresence. So, Sven, do you want to already bring them in and have them introduce themselves?
Absolutely. Let's start with Luisa on LinkedIn. She calls herself futurista, talent and leadership advisor, and expression scientist. So welcome, Luisa, to the show.
Thank you to be here. Thank you.
Great to have you.
Yeah.
And our second guest is actually Tim Schuster. He's the CEO of Humanizing Technologies. So we have Luisa from Milan, Italy, and Tim, who's from nearby Cologne, I believe. Hi, Tim.
Hi. Thanks for good to see you too.
So excellent. As Erika said, we're going to talk about telepresence today. And before we start, let's get a very quick intro to you guys, of course. Luisa, do you want to kick us off with a little intro?
Okay, thank you. So, as you said before, I am in Milan, actually in front of the cathedral. Today is not very sunny like we are used to be in Italy, but it's not a problem. Now we have other problems like a pandemic. But apart from that, we are glad that now we have technology that can help us in all sector, in all field, and everywhere elsewhere. I used to say that Beyond International is a consultancy company based on leadership advisory and talent and innovation in management. That's why even if we are not a company or a system provider or a robotic company, let's say, I'm glad that Double Robotics in California was happy to work with us. So we are the exclusive partner in Italy for Double Robotics. Why? 10 years ago would have never happened that, never. Now, Double Robotics was very, understood together with us that double tree is not a piece of metal, it's a service. Mm-hmm. Something I love to say that one day we will say the first transportation was the double tree. Then the holograms, but double will be forever the first way that we move in the world.
Okay, very cool. So over to you, Tim.
Yeah. I mean, it same catch me as it did with Luisa. Back in the days, so 2014, I came across a picture that blew my mind, and it was a video conferencing on wheels essentially. And back in the days, I was a professional in video conferencing, and I just was selling telepresence solutions, room systems, on the wall, mounted. But then there came this dimension of mobility into video conferencing, and I thought, oh my God, you created another physical presence in another place somewhere in the world, just easily connected via internet, of course, via video conferencing. This has really much potential on so many areas. And I was totally convinced, and since the pandemic, obviously, it got proven that telepresence robotics, helps us to eliminate boundaries that we have, for instance, like travel restrictions. And it's absolutely fascinating all the time again, and inspiring. People get inspired from this technology. So I'm happy to talk about that today with you.
Very cool. And so we again basically did find a topic that's pretty up to date and current, of course, right? So Tim, I think we're going to stay with you for a few more minutes. Could you give us a quick intro on to telepresence. What, like, explain it 101, basically, what is it all about, really? Explained a little bit already, but I guess you have the full scope now. So
probably I can also show you a bit of it. I mean, it's essentially very easy. And let me explain it with the product of the double robot, as Luisa said. I mean, essentially, a telepresence robot gives you the opportunity to use your laptop or your mobile device and simply connect on a device, which is a telepresence robot that gives you wheels. And I will show you how this works, okay?
sure.
So for that, I share my screen right now.
Let me get you in here. Okay. And here we go. I think we can see it now.
Okay, you see here my world card. It's now my European card, and you see two different locations. One is in our Vienna office and one is in Cologne. And you simply use your web app. So all is based on WebRTC. That's the technology behind of it. So no need for an installation of a client, such as you use it with Skype or something else. All is emulated in the browser. So the browser is responsible to take on the camera, to adapt the microphone, and of course to establish the connection to the product, which is now happening. And now we are in our Cologne's office. And what you see is, of course, the perspective and the angle of the camera of the robot. And you see here's a live demo up here on the right side. A couple of people are here in the office. And you have now the full control to do something. So if you'd like to move forward, you see the grid on the ground. It's like Google Street View. You simply click on it. I'm here hands-free, and the product is automatically driving to that point. Otherwise, I can also use my arrow keys. And I just, for instance, move around, have a look. I can also, of course, zoom. So let me do this.
Oh, I see my old friend Pepper there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
How is he doing?
Perfect. I will show it to you. The robots. A couple of them are standing over here. Some of them are over here. I'm now coming to a presentation here. You see Pepper is the center of everything. And here I am, by the way. Hello. So it's this is, by the way, a very interesting point of view if you can see yourself in a third dimension. And essentially that's it. So of course I'm now in the same office, but essentially you can use it everywhere in the world. Wherever you have internet connection, you just simply connect to the robot and use it. And this is fascinating.
So that is very cool. Thank you so much for that quick demo. So that really means that you basically see a fleet of robots that you can basically touch on a map or click on a map, and you can basically become part of these robots in a second with your web browser, and then navigate using these robots and see and hear it. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Today, I mean, they are more in offices and in service departments, or used for internal services. But me personally, I've also visions to make it more publicly accessible. For several different use cases, which we might talk about in the next couple of minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah. So and we should definitely point out to our viewers out there that for our session today, we are concentrating on robotic telepresence, and especially going off of that lovely demo, it would be great to hear from both you and Luisa. How would you define the difference between telepresence and video conferencing? A lot of us are very familiar with the different modes that we have in video conference, like we're doing right now. So what is setting apart telepresence in your view from that?
It's to me, listen, I can show you, for example, the difference. This is my colleague that was doing a lot of noise just before, but apart from that, you can have a talk, and you can, apart from everything, you can even, have an hug in some way, and you can talk, and you get the 3 dimensions. So, for example, if I get taller, she can get taller as well to speak with me better. So, for example, she's called Virginia. So, hi, Virginia. Hello.
Hi, Virginia.
So if she can be taller, so Regina, please get taller, alzati.
The battery might not be great for this right now.
This is a problem of technology, old technology.
Yeah.
In any case, she can be taller up to 1.60 meters, so is how a human girl at least is the medium, and is not very. I mean, is very light. Is not less than 8 kilos. So you can use in your office. You can take to your home, and you can. And the difference. Sorry for Erica for the question. So coming back to your question. Which is the difference? This is 3 dimensions. She's now laughing. She can go to say hello to another colleague of ours instead, and with no appointment. And this is a big difference. Instead, our agenda today, even for an old-fashioned telephone call, we have to take an appointment.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very stressful. Instead, if she has the power to just turn on, it's like before you use the key to open the door of the office. Now you turn on the avatar, let's say Cobot, and you say hello to the colleagues that are in the office. So for remote working, and not just for pandemic, because of course, in the pandemic is not useful, is a must-have, For the future, is nice to have, must-have it for the future, means, do we wish to have a new normal or not? Do we wish to save what is good in this moment, or just to destroy everything living as in the past? So I think this kind of technology can help us to be somewhere in the office, because we really need to be with colleagues. Neuroscience demonstrate that creativity fell down when we do not work together. We need to work together. I exist because you exist. My brain exists because your brain exists. So say that. Sometimes I prefer, or it's better if I'm in my home with my son, with my daughter, or what else, and I take a bit easy. I can dress less up. I mean, just you stay more comfortable if you want. But so it's the future. That's the difference between just Teams and Zoom.
So, Luisa, one more extra question for you, actually. Do you think there's a special high potential when we talk about the time after Corona, when it says some of us will return to the office, but some of us will not? And so we have like a hybrid workforce where some of us are in the office, some will actually need to be joined remotely somehow, right? And for these people, I would say, having the freedom, as you just said, to move around, and just visit whoever you want to visit, like you would do it in the office, sounds like a great idea, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Now people is not really convinced about that. It's not really, they really sometimes fear technology, or they don't not understand exactly how to move in the office. Tim was very good in showing you how it's easy and how it's powerful. But sometimes, you have company that sometimes don't agree, or if they are big, very big, they need time to decide. If they are small, they fare more. So, but the only upgrade after this is the hologram. That now is very expensive.
Yeah, and that, I love these points that you're making, because there's especially around spontaneity. Now, even though we have the means necessarily to communicate and to reach each other over different channels, that's one key aspect that is missing is spontaneity and not having things needing to be strictly scheduled, right? Tim, you mentioned earlier that there are quite a few use cases and areas beyond the obvious, right? Beyond going to the office for meetings. Could you touch on what are some of the areas where you're seeing telepresence robots being used right now?
Of course. Of course, beyond the offices, so the remote working or hybrid working, which is essentially got accelerated thanks to the pandemic. We have even seen use cases in industrial spaces, such as in production plants, where the engineers from headquarters are organizing their technical engineers on site at the plants to observe the situation, to give advices, feedback for support purposes. This is very common in the industry. So I'm really in the industry like. On the other hand, of course, for pupils and students, so meaning being a remote student, remote pupil, especially if you face some sicknesses or some diseases or something that, or even disability, which probably does not even get you in the comfortable situations to go somewhere, which is, in my opinion, a very emotional use case, because we really contribute an impact, a social impact for such people's lives, that they get, an opportunity to be somehow outside. One of our very most emotional ones was that we had a use case in a kids hospital where kids with cancers, they needed, because of their treatment, they needed to be for 6 or 7 or 8 weeks in one single room, stay there and exactly in the other room once next there was another kid, but they both couldn't never meet each other during this period of time, but they could get together with Telepresence Robot out on the floor in front of their rooms, which was so emotionally, because they were so isolated all the time for a couple of weeks, but next to next, and both had the same, disease or illness. So a niche, of course, but very emotional. And on the other hand, I mean, for observations, security purposes, for so as a visitation tool in elderly facilities, as this was, by the way, when all the elderly cares were isolated during the pandemic, which are still, this is a very helpful tool to be present and immersive. What Luisa said, it's of course you can use WhatsApp video or FaceTime or something like that, but it's differently, because here someone has to assist you, and especially when it comes to elderly people, you need someone who helps you to use the technology. But as Luisa said, with a telepresence robot, on one click you are in the room, immersive, and you're driving around, which it's bound. It has no barriers for the elderly, for instance. So this is also one another use case. Or museums, for instance, especially now since the pandemic. I mean, museums are a very, very interesting spot for visitations, for digital tours. And so many things. Yeah.
It sounds to me like then the feature to be able to freely move around and decide for yourself where you want to go, is that really the key advantage over video conferencing, right? So it gives so much, right, that you're able to. I mean, I was thinking, when we're all at home, of course, right, and everybody is in front of a laptop, then we can just as well do a video conference, right? But once we have a group of people, for example, right? Or like in the example that you gave of the child or the 2 children in the hospital, for example, right? To have some fun, more or less outside in the lobby or so, where they're kind of chasing each other with the robots, for example, like that, right? That would not be possible with a video conference, right?
I give you an example. Also, what I showed you right now with the opportunity to connect to our office here in Cologne and drive around. What happens if you might be my customer, and we do it since the pandemic daily, that we invite our potentially new clients via robot to our facility, and this opportunity that they can freely move around gives them the opportunity to see each and every corner, not only the frame that we decide to show you, and it connects you much more on a trust, on a base which results on trust, because you invite someone into your home and your house, and they can move around freely. This has another emotional connection, in my opinion.
Yeah,
this
very cool.
Helps, especially with customer demos and demonstrations. Yeah.
I get a bit nervous because I see a DHL truck driving there, so I hear the clock, the ring already. But next we wanted to talk. Let's hope this works. Next we wanted to talk a bit about the technical side, right? So we touched a bit. I mean, you showed us a live demo, right? So we understand it just requires a web browser. But I'm really wondering how much of a extremely good Wi-Fi network do you, for example, need in your office, right? And what about even things like the battery life? I mean, are you able to make it through the day? Sharing these robots with multiple employees. So can you give us some insights here?
Should I overtake Luisa, the technical things?
It's okay. It's okay. I think it's 4 hours. It's 4 hours battery, and but it's today is our fault because we weren't not working, and so we forgot. But it's like if you forgot to put the right battery here, so it's the same. So it's generally, of course, you can have one robot for more than an employee. And for one full day is enough, actually. Or you can have more robots it depends how many employees do you have. But in any case, 4 hour battery doesn't mean 4 hour working, but much more. Is it right, Tim?
Yeah. So, I mean, the product is being created to be a shared service product as well. So it's not dedicated to one and single employee. You can easily, change the persona who is connecting to the product. So within minutes, of course, on click. And you can regulate your day schedule, for instance, half an hour, 15, 1 hour, 2 hours. You can really book, so to say, the robot for your purposes. And as Luisa said, so the usually operating duration is up to 4 hours, and then it fully recharges within 2 hours. So of course this has to be respected, but the capabilities are getting better and better. And when it comes to the bandwidth, it's obviously it's a synchron video conferencing, meaning your download and your upload needs to be same, because your video you're sending up and the same you're downloading has to be the same latency, the same bandwidth, but it's WebRTC on a very latest codec, meaning that you have roughly 1.5. Yeah, there's another robot singing around.
I hope.
It's imitating Shakira.
One question out of the top of my head is, if the battery goes low, for example, I mean, does it return to the dock like a Roomba, or do you have to manually return, for example? Do you have to take care of it? Or
Yet at the moment, yes, it's not automatically returning back to the base. Okay. But this is just a matter of time, because other functionalities, which are, at least from the hardware side, are already pre-configured, are automatic path planning. So meaning that the robot can, you have seen that it was driving automatically to a spot where I click to, hands-free. Yeah. This is, by the way, a huge advantage in compared to the versions before, and even on the market, absolutely latest standard. Yeah. But the next thing that might happen or will happen is an automatically driving, so path planning, meaning, especially for museums, tour case, that the robot is driving autonomously from spot to spot to spot, and then you can schedule even tours, and depending on that, you can also then let going the robot back to the home station when it achieves a certain level of battery status. It will come.
Okay, very cool. So what about just more stupid questions probably, but what about stairs? Like, obviously doesn't work.
It works once.
It works once. Okay.
It's like a baby.
Is that something that the robot would overlook though? So if you would navigate to some place where there's like a 10 centimeter difference or so, would you kind of break the robot this way, or?
Currently, no, because it has a depth sensor and it scans its environment. It's depending, of course, on your speed. Usually it should not fall down. It should stop, because it detects a barrier or a fault. An obstacle.
Basculating very, very well.
And it will just stop basically and tell you I can't move there basically.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It will also not drive into walls or into obstacles that are around. It stops or even navigates around it. It's already included.
Yeah. Can I add
Sure. Go ahead, Luisa. Sorry.
For example, maybe there is something that could be interesting for companies as well and for hospital as well, because from August of this year, there is a new feature that is called a multi-viewer. This means that before this, there was one people, one robot, okay? Now it's 5 people in a robot. This means that there is a driver of K, so if Sven or Erica, you are a driver, I can see you in the robot, but your four son, I don't know, your four whatever, can see with you and can listen with you. So think about education, think about an hospital where there is the professor who is explaining or visiting, and then you can have not 1 student, but 5 students visiting with you. This is a huge improvement for double robotics.
Well, that's very cool, of course. And I would almost assume that this limit of 5 people will at some point probably also drop, because technically there should be no reason to not to have like hundreds of people listening to that one person driving around. So I remember one more question that Erica actually has, and that was about, what about live outside events? Is it waterproof?
Well, it is technically not really waterproof. I mean, you should be careful with it. But we're driving out. I mean, you can drive outside. Of course, the territory is usually a bit more rough than an internal floor in buildings.
And you need Wi-Fi coverage too, right? So.
You need, well, you can use a mobile hotspot, so it works everywhere. And there were also a couple of interesting movies and videos that have been casted outside somewhere. So, but it's yet not made for outdoor usage. So the warranty, in case something would happen, would be a bit difficult to get warranty on an outdoor usage.
Cool, thanks.
Well, that makes sense, but that leaves some room for improvements, I suppose.
Absolutely.
And so I really would love to then move to, I guess, like the $1 million question, which is there space for telepresence and customer experience, especially when it's coming to e-commerce and perhaps combining these different experiences with what a typical physical shopping experience might look like?
I don't know. It's a difficult question. I mean, of course, in customer experience, we have clients, for example, that are using in customer experience, especially in B2B, means business to business. For example, before you can show your 3D printer, for example. Let's say, I don't want to say the brand. And now they use the Telepresence robot to show the 3D printer to their customer. So with e-commerce, I don't know what you mean. I think what client, customers, and people often forget that now we have technology for different things. So this is to be you in another place, mainly speaking. Then you have, for example, virtual reality, augmented reality. We have to say, but this is the last thing, that Double now is even improving in virtual reality with a QR code on the Double 3 as well, right, Tim? So this is another improvement, very recent, because now the demand for this kind of robots is very huge, is improving. So, of course, Double is improving fast any kind of feature they can offer. So now you can look to a QR code in the robot, and then you see something, for example, for the museum. We are now in a central museum in Milan. The school used the robot to see the museum, and this is called Nudec Museum, that is a museum of the different cultures. So it's interesting.
In addition to that, I'd like to mention that, even due to the pandemic, we will see more hybrid, customer experiences out in the market in retail environments. Today we have the click and meet and something like that, or in Asia, currently, this live streaming shopping is a very trending topic, which might also be useful for telepresence robot, for instance, or I believe, in my opinion, that telepresence robots will also bring you target groups to your businesses that might even not be able to come to, whether physically or to afford it, or
True.
but to get the experience and to decide to purchase something. It might happen that such tools are getting more and more useful in the future.
I think maybe the pandemic is actually the door opener for these technologies, right? Because right now we're in the mood that we need to try out a lot of things, right? So maybe this is really opening the doors, actually.
An accelerator at least. I mean, it was existing beforehand, of course, even a couple of years before, but now the acceptance for the adoption of such tools, even though that now digitalization has really reached to every company, and everyone has to think about how to bring people together in times when they are limited due to travel restrictions, and so thanks to that, this technology has now a boost and impact, much
Very
more
cool.
than it was before.
So I must admit, in the past, we've been talking about telepresence already. It wasn't the main topic. We mainly talked about robotics, I think, but we had actually Raphael Hostetler here in our audio podcast, and we talked about telepresence already. And they have a very research style approach to this kind of robotics, I would say, right? So they also explored things like smell, tactile feedback, for example. So the question for you would be, now that we understand what is currently on the market when it comes to telepresence, how do you think this will evolve in the future, actually? Do you see something like smell, tactile feedback? Do you think this will come to these robots very soon?
I know that at least some clients of mine, again for museum, they are studying something that is related to your brain. So if you can move, you move in the robot, and you can feel something in your brain. But this is very, very early. I don't think about the smell, but I don't know if Tim is. I don't think it could be possible.
Not always beneficial, of course. Right?
No, never know. Never know.
I believe there to adapt the physical mechanisms into the telepresence. This might be a changer. So meaning that you can operate your body remotely in another place to grab things, to do things, to
exactly, yeah.
This is so tactile at a certain point to get feedback. Of course, it's a part of the whole mixed reality somehow solution. So that combining the physical world with the telepresence is a changer, and this
because I think the telepresence robots, they have a very strong case, I would say, for areas where you don't have a computer screen around, right? Like if you want to go to that worker, for example, in the industry, in an industrial plant, for example, that just there's no screen around, basically. There's no laptop, right? So you could actually but still go there with the telepresence robot, right? And but now let's say you wanted to press a button in the physical world, for example, right? That would be a game changer, I would say, right?
Actually, yeah. But for example, a client of mine was changing the elevator. So instead of push the button, you say, "Okay, please, third floor." So waiting for the hands, even if because hands is something that some robots has got. So this is telepresence.
It's quite interesting, actually. Now I just realized that either we basically have an API for everything in the future. Let's say you drive into the elevator, and whatever the robot scans a QR code that gives it access to the IoT API of the elevator, and you can operate it with an API or so. Or you actually have to physically press the button. What happens first? So.
Well, this is of course, this is all that covers the technically and world. But if we should do a service at a human, we cannot call an API. So when we think about the elderly care and the demographic development, so there are so many simple daily tasks to do in life with elderly people, which can be just for some time at the day, such as helping them get their sticking socks on or something like that, or reminding or something like that, the physical task where the service today, I mean Caritas, or they came just for 5 minutes to this person to operate this service. I mean, there can be a huge potential to make this happen. It's depend on the hardware, and it depends, of course, on the hardware that can do this job, which is today not really existing.
Now, that's a very interesting thing to think about, the hardware and where we need to move to go forward. Luisa, earlier you mentioned the social aspect, right, and the kind of lack of overall awareness, and in some cases, even some apprehension or fear about interacting with and via robots in general, and how that might affect us in the future. What is your impression about, or rather from the general public's perception of robotics, like in this sense? Like Swen and I, we were talking about this, and it really seems, for us at least, that it's quite polarizing. Either people really like the idea and the potential that it brings about, or people are totally like, no, I don't want that. That wouldn't be beneficial for me to replace the real experience. So what do you think, like, how are people in general reacting to this topic and where it's going?
Yeah, you are perfectly right, Erika. Often they hate or love our cobots. Why? Because as everything in the world, we can say we have two kind of people mainly. The one who are curious, who love innovation, who love to exit the comfort zone, and so they love any kind of new things, everything new. And the other part of the world, of the people who really scare everything. And nowadays, today's, what they scare is probably more artificial intelligence. Better, singularity point, no? So everything, any new things, every new technology would be a day when they collapse altogether and they become stronger than the human being. So this is a topic, a huge topic. Now, what I really think, that's why I launched my first school on artificial intelligence that started last Friday, is because we really need to teach, to explain to any citizen, not manager, citizen, that artificial intelligence is not dangerous. It's like electricity before. You don't need to know the algorithm. And even if Tim knows that today programming is very easier than before. You can program in Pepper with not so many skills. So we really need to explain everyone that this can help us and can be dangerous as well. It's true in the future. See something about, I don't want to say any brand. So to be safe, all of us, we need to study, we need to listen, we need to speak, and just all together we can take the well of the new technology and control the risk.
Yeah,
very cool. And I think, once you're exposed to something, right, then the barrier is falling, right? So once you've seen such a robot once, and maybe you've figured out that the robot AI is not really dangerous, basically, then they're typically way more open. But you need to get past that barrier, right? You need to try it out once and then get some exposure, actually. So yeah. I'm really wondering, where will people actually first see such a robot? Is it the office? Is it the school? Is it a retail shop to drive around and look at some products, or a museum, right? I guess time will tell. Cool.
Yeah, you're right. If they see in the museum, maybe they scare less to use deeply after that. I mean, they need a bit of time to get used to love, something like that.
So we are not doing very good in time, Erica. We are almost a bit over. Should we get into the last thing?
Yes. All right, so I guess that means I should ask it. All right, so our last thing for this week is, what was the last thing that you encountered or learned about that you felt would change the world? And it doesn't have to be a positive or negative aspect. It doesn't have to have come about just yet, or maybe it already did. We're just curious to get your impressions on this. So I will go first, and really the last thing that I thought, okay, this is going to be a complete game changer, as it really became available to everyone, was solar powered technology. And so I thought that, once now solar panels are really available for everyone to use, and there's going to be so many different use cases for them, and it's really going to be that we'll have batteries that we can just put out in the sun and use in basically any kind of device, and that all our cars would be running on solar and all of these different things. Now, fast forward a few years, and we're obviously not there yet. But I still have confidence that we will reach sometime in our lifetime, at least, the point where almost everything is made in some kind of or powered by some kind of renewable energy.
Very cool. Who wants to go next? Luisa, go for it.
Well, it fits to Erica, because yesterday currently I'm reading another book about. I mean, it's a subject that we all heard all the time before the pandemic, but it's still over us all the time, and it's about the climate change. And Bill Gates. I mean, he's the person who is driving fanatically with his Gates Foundation to challenge down this subject. And I really love this engagement because it's so valuable to all of us and so disrupting. So sometimes, even despite from all the cool technology that we have over here, I'm literally come down to the point that there is something above us which is so disruptive, and this challenge that he faces about coming to zero emissions on a global point, which seems unreachable, but it's the onlyest way to make it stop. There's a very nice analogy, by the way, for climate and for climate change. It's about the bath tube. Imagine you have a bath tube which is becoming more and more fuller, and you just you probably can reduce the water which is dipping into it because you reduce the carbon emissions, but it will not get less. So at a certain point, it will overswap. So there's no opportunity to say we only reduce, because at a certain point it will come over. And this, something like that catches me besides all the other stuff that we have, because it's so fundamental. And probably a bit old-fashioned, but it is challenging me.
Cool. And believe me, we have more coming up with regards to sustainability quite soon, actually, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Luisa, what is your last thing?
I mean, sustainability is the first thing, and I hope that any kind of technology today is here to help us and the world. We often speak about circular economy, circular health. I mean, we need now to build a circular health, a circular brain. So otherwise, if we still go on, we don't build a new world for our babies, for the young generation. And we need really to think more about young generation, really. For the first time, I think we really need to leave space to young people, because they can help us to see the world in a different way. And that's it. Like an example, I can say that the medal of the Tokyo World Champion, how to say, are made by used technologies. So this is nice because you will have the medal that is made with all technologies, and you don't waste all things in the world, in the planet.
Yeah, very nice. I almost feel embarrassed now, but my last thing is a bit nerdy. Actually, it's the last time I really thought the world would come to an end and we would all change was actually when Bitcoin came out. So it made me invest a lot in Bitcoin, actually, which wasn't the worst decision, to be honest with you. But it also hasn't really changed the world a lot, right? So we can make the point blockchain is changing the world now, not exactly Bitcoin, but like the concept, the blockchain. But I'm not sure if it has quite. It has maybe overpromised a bit so far, right? But we'll see what happens.
We'll see. Yeah.
We'll see. Cool. Luisa, Tim, thank you so much for the time. It was excellent to talk to you.
It was a pleasure.
Wish you all the best for the future and stay safe, okay?
Thanks a lot.
You too.
Same for you too.
Ciao, Tim.
Bye.
Ciao, Erika. Ciao.
Bye.